Good evening, everyone, and welcome once again to the Writer's Room. I'm your host, the Night Editor, Kat Rocha, Editor-in-Chief of 01 Publishing, and with me, as always, is...
J.Ishiro Finney, author and alien in a human suit.
And we did have our very own buddy Lord with us, but he has disappeared. So we will hope that he will rear his head again later this evening. But tonight we have a very special guest. We have with us this evening CJ
Carella,
I'm sorry, sir.
author of several sci-fi and sci-fi fantasy and I guess superhero novels. Such as the Warp Marines series and Armageddon Girl. And also, for you gamers out there, he's worked for Steve Jackson Games, Palladium, and Eden Games. Say hello.
Hello, people. This is CJ Carella, a 30-year veteran of the gaming industry and more recently an independent writer.
Wonderful.
And Buddy's here.
Yes, I am actually here this time.
Yay!
So I guess we can just get straight to the interview. If you could, why don't you talk a little bit about who you are and your main series is, I guess, Warp Marines and Armageddon Girl. And you said you had a story about Armageddon Girl.
Yes. Back in the ancient days of 2013, I wrote a novel and did the usual thing at first. Bought a copy of the Writer's Market, started looking for possible publishers that didn't need an agent to submit, and sent a couple of samples to people and got a bunch of form rejection letters. And then I said, why don't I just do it myself? I mean, that was becoming a thing back then. So I did a Kickstarter, raised $5,000, and then self-published on Amazon. And now it's been a little bit over 6 years and 15 novels later, and here I am, writing books for a living.
Interesting. Well, you jumped in at the right time, from what I understand. That was right about when the writing market was beginning to freak out that digital would take over and kind of speeding up their own implosion. So as far as writing and marketing online, what would you tell new writers?
Well, first of all, I think we're still in the best time to be an indie writer. I mean, mostly through Amazon. And the main thing to do is work on building an audience. I would say when you start, it's going to take a while because obviously there is, thousands and thousands of books on Amazon, and making yourself stand out is tough. It takes a lot of work. But I would say start by building a mailing list. Start looking at promotional programs. There's a lot of promos you can do once you have 1 or 2 books under your belt. And try to make yourself seen that way.
Okay, so starting off, what is the value and strength of a mailing list?
The main thing is you build a pre-made audience. Usually, I mean, when I first started, I ended up getting like half a dozen people to sign up through the Kickstarter that I did, and after 2 years, I had maybe 50 people in my mailing list, and that meant that when I released a book, I would get at least 30, 40 people buying the book on the first day, which for Amazon algorithms means my book is going to shoot up in the rankings to the low 10,000s, let's say. And that means Amazon will actually show the book to more people.
And for anyone out there who is curious, let me assure you, in this day and age when promotion is very hard to come by, and frankly, nobody trusts reviews anymore in the press, a review on Amazon and getting onto the Amazon algorithm is worth far more than any magazine coverage or internet ad you could place.
Exactly. Yeah, I really spend nothing on regular advertising. Most of my advertising is through Amazon, and I don't spend a lot of money on that. It's mostly reviews, it's mostly mailing lists, and the occasional sale. I usually reduce the price of my first book to 99 cents, put it in a few sites, and that usually makes me jump again in the algorithm.
What do you mean by a few sites?
Well, there's a few promo sites where you can advertise your book, and
Well, there are hundreds, but there are only a few good ones.
Yeah.
What are the good ones?
Well, and again, that changes too, because I've noticed that some sites that were really good after a few years, they're not so good anymore. But
Well, the really good ones, basically what you're doing is signing up for their mailing list, because that's all they've got too. It's just like a digital catalog or a mailing list, and most of the time, like self-published authors, the way that they get in with those kind of companies. Kat's done it with was it Book Barbarian she told me about, and BookBub does the same thing. You can sign up to be one of their creators, and you don't have to pay in, but you can still take advantage of some of their pre-sale stuff and that kind of thing, where you can put your book up to 6 weeks, I think, before it comes out. And, more or less they'll put you at the bottom of their page, and, you get access to some of their mailing lists. But if you pay, you get access to their big mailing list, which is a few million.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, I've had good results with Book Barbarian, Fuzzy Librarian, and a few others. But yeah, you have to you have to essentially take a chance with a few sites, see how well they do, and then decide if you want to use them again.
So out there for the listeners, I would encourage you to start sending questions right now in the chat. This is someone who has had quite a bit of experience publishing online, has seen quite a bit of success at it, and has had a lot of experience with the gaming industry. And I know that's two fields that most of you are interested in, and one of the reasons you guys come to listen to the show. In the meantime, can you tell us a bit about Warp Marines?
Yeah, that was I started that kind of as a joke. It was like I wanted to do like an anti-Star Trek novel. Essentially, yeah, in the sense, Star Trek is all about harmony and peace, and this is a book about war, a nation that's forged by war, and it's ugly Americans in space, basically.
Well, from as much as I've read of Warp Marines, they kind of have a good reason to be pissed.
Oh yeah. It wasn't unjustified. First Contact starts with the aliens killing over half the human race in a bombing attack.
And one thing I'll mention to the listeners, I've been reading Warp Marines, and one thing that's kind of struck me is it has kind of a grim Paul Verhoeven humor to it through the entire story. So even though you're dealing with some really dark stuff, whenever you're dealing with the Earthlings, you get some really great asides.
I usually I can't help but inject some humor into my stories. It's especially dark humor. That's kind of my thing.
Exactly. All right, let's see. We've got some questions. Let's see. Kat?
Oh, our very own buddy says, you can pay for organic and truthful reviews, believe it or not, with literal successful agents who monitor the reviews and turn down people who sound fake, etc.
Okay, so that's more of a comment, but would you want to add to that?
Well, I've never paid for reviews myself, so I've been lucky that I have a lot of great fans that give me a nice number of reviews. So, but
I haven't paid for them, but I look into, being someone who's into marketing for a while and taking apart anything I get into. For 12 years, I edited a lot of self-published work, and so I was into it that way. And being into comic books now and creating comic books, and also wanting to create a light novel, and finding where the marketing is for that, where is the sort of substrate of marketing information. And I found a lot of people that they'll do that. Like basically, they're authors themselves, and they know what it takes to get on these places, and so they offer packages where they'll, set you up with certain artists so that you have a really nice cover, and then they set you up with up to 50 to 100 reviews, and they like are very big on them being organic and truthful, because everybody knows, right? If it sounds like it's just yes, if it's yes service, just lip service, we're gonna pass it over. We know it's crap, right?
Well,
So
also more importantly, with the Amazon reviews, it's vital that the people leaving those reviews are people who actually read those kinds of books. One of the biggest mistakes a lot of new writers will make is get like their dad and their grandma and their mom and their brother all to give reviews. And the problem is suddenly that tells the algorithm really false information. So like, let's say you get grandma to review your book and grandpa to review your book, and they're into rodeos, and dad's into rodeos too. Now your sci-fi book is being suggested to people who bought a lot of books about rodeos.
Absolutely, and I mean, and again, that's another reason why a mailing list is so important, because those people like your books, they like the genres you're writing in, and they're gonna give you reviews, and their shopping preferences are gonna align with the book that you're releasing.
So most of Amazon's advertising, from what because I used to be a regular on K&D, and the website, where it's basically just a big forum with self-published authors on it, and some pretty successful ones in there. I mean, there's some best-selling authors that are regulars in there, and some of them even become moderators, and they just kind of try to help people. Who was it? Hugh Howey was in there for a while. I don't know if you guys know him.
Okay, yeah, oh yeah, huge name in self-publishing.
Okay, yeah, he wrote Wool, which would be right up your alley, Ishiro, if you've never read it.
I'm familiar with it. I haven't read it. I know it's about somebody who, people who live in missile silo bunkers, and some nano virus or horrible mistake has taken over the surface, or at least that's what they're told.
What, like Grey Goose type stuff?
Sorta.
Yeah, I mean, it begins like this one guy. He's lived his whole life almost under the bunker, and he just like all of a sudden walks outside. He's like, all right, I'm done, guys. I'm gonna go walk outside and either die or survive. That's kind of how it. I mean, if you'd lived your whole life and you had never seen anything different, and you got so comfortable, it's like, well, I could live here and die comfortably, or I can go out there and try. Why not? But yeah, I mean, Hugh Howey used to be on there, and there used to be a lot of other people. But anyway, they all kind of, I don't know, like there's always been a methodology about all of this. That's why I was so amazed that, when everybody's like, oh, there's no marketing for comics, and I was like, well, this whole marketing platform, this whole structure has already been created. You just go look at self-published books. They've already been doing this. And I've reached out and I talked to a couple of the owners of like what we were talking about. Somebody like BookBub, Book Barbarian, Fussy Librarian, those kind of places. And I said, hey, would you take a graphic novel? They all said yes.
Cool.
Owen asks I'm sorry, CJ. Owen asks you, do you know of our Lord and Savior Bio Booster Armor Guyver?
I don't. I think that's going over my head, but I mean, I remember the original movie way back in the day. But
our listener Owen Lister, super fan, is obsessed with the Guyver and all the related manga and anime, and cannot go a show without it putting at least one Guyver related question into the chat. So sorry.
Well, that's okay. I actually did a couple of Guyver inspired role-playing game articles back in the day, especially for Rifts. Yeah, I had like some. I had some bio armors in Rift South America, which.
Palladium.
Yep, for Palladium Books, yes.
I loved Rifts. Rifts was such a good system. It was so fun.
Yeah, it really was. It was. I love the whole kitchen sink element, and I contributed to it, and I'm accused of being one of the people who ruined the game by making it overpowered.
I don't know.
And I'm proud of it.
The concept of mega damage kind of implied that it was overpowered to begin with.
Well, yeah, any game that started the player character option being a Dragon Link with 100 MDC, yeah, it was gonna be overpowered. But I'm proud
Yeah,
of
well, I
it.
mean,
And
they
would
had
play it
like,
again.
I don't think it got overpowered until they started like coming out with the armadas, the spaceship armadas.
Yeah, that was me too. I did Face World. I had like Silver Surfer style characters, and they had like 700 MDC personnel.
Oh
And,
gosh.
So what
yeah,
was your favorite element of Rift, since it was such an insane mix of settings?
well, I just like the mixing genres. I mean, which is something I've always enjoyed, starting with GURPS. So yeah, like the idea that you could have like a powerful sorcerer fighting next to a power armor guy, fighting next to some alien.
Have you tried? Oh God, what is it? It's is it Monty Cook? I think came out with a new system recently, or not recently, like 2 or 3 years ago. But it's more story based than like stat based.
No, that's not my sort of thing. I'm a crunchy guy. I like numbers. I like rolling dice and doing numbers.
That's I can roll with that.
Yeah, I want to see the hit points counter drop. That's how I like it.
So
That was one thing
did you
about
write
Palladium
for?
I liked.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, just that was one thing about Palladium I liked is yes, it took you like a night and a half to roll up your character, but once you did it, watching those numbers fly was a lot of
The
fun.
percentile system was genius.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they had a lot of cool ways to improve your character too. I mean, you basically you could just evolve your character into new stuff if you wanted. It was a lot like almost like a shonen anime or something.
Oh yeah, and you could do all kinds of little mini maxing. Let's give the guy like boxing or swimming or whatever, and that gives you a couple of bonuses here or there, and they all add up after a while. So that was fun.
Okay, we got a question.
We have a question from Fiona Wolf. Think you will do more Kickstarters for New Olympus or any other series? I think Warp Marines would make a good strategy game.
Well, I mean, I did the one Kickstarter for the first book in New Olympus, which was Armageddon Girl, and that gave me seed money to buy covers. Well, actually, I started making my own covers, which was a terrible mistake, but I paid for some interior art, which was nice, and paid for an editor. But since then, I really haven't done Kickstarters or crowdfunding because of the time lag that it would throw into my production schedule. If I ever do a game, though, I would probably do crowdfunding.
Moving to your Armageddon Girl series, I guess that's the Olympia or Olympus series?
Yeah, the New Olympus series, yeah.
One thing that a lot of people have been talking about with all the trouble going on in comics and with Marvel and DC just completely ignoring their fan base. There's a real hunger out there for superheroes and the heroic genre, but the entry, there's a lot of difficulty in finding an artist sometimes for writers. And I've had lots of people ask me personally about making the jump to doing superhero stories in prose for novels. You've done it. What would you say about that?
Well, I mean, New Olympus was my love letter to the comic book genre. I'm a huge comic book guy, and I've been following a lot of the YouTube commentary on the comic book industry lately. But yeah, I mean, I ideally I would have loved to do a comic book, but I looked at the finding an artist, paying for the art. It just seemed like a huge investment and a very risky situation. So I figured, well, let me write a novel.
You wouldn't believe how damn risky it can be.
Yeah, that's the thing. I hear lots of horror stories, and all it takes is your artist get 1/3 of the way in. They find something, a better project, and you're out in the cold.
It really does take creating a relationship.
Yeah, so I mean, so I wrote the novel. I mean, basically, my idea was I wanted to see. I'm huge on alternate history too. That's one of my other loves, and I wanted to see how society would develop if you started having superheroes show up just around the time of the post World War I era and into the Pope era, and then finally you have Superman punching Hitler, literally, and what happens to geopolitics after that. So I created this world, which was going to be a role-playing game setting, as a matter of fact. And then I came up with some characters that I was interested in exploring the world with, and that's how I wrote the New Olympus series.
I loved how self-aware that series was.
Yeah, the main character, Armageddon Girl, she's a gaming geek, not so loosely based on Sid Sherman from the Guild by Felicia Day. So she is very self-referential and very pop culture oriented.
So what are you reading right now?
Right now, I'm reading for work. I'm reading a lot of LitRPG books because I'm thinking about trying my hand at that next. And there's a lot of stuff that it's not so good, and there's some stuff that's good but a little rough. But I've been reading the Land series by Acheron. Oh my God. Now I don't even remember his name, but it's a huge LitRPG series. But the books are called The Land, and they're entertaining. I really like them.
Elite RPG?
Yeah, lit RPG, that's in literature RPG. It's a genre where it's essentially like fictionalized MMO gaming.
Oh, so like isekai.
Yeah, or Ready Player One is a early example of the subgenre.
Okay, gotcha. All right, I mean, yeah, I could see how that would. I don't know. When I was creating Sins of the Fae, there was one point of it where I was having difficulty figuring out like one of the side characters' history, and so I actually made game rules for it, which were just like bullet points and stuff. But I made, game rules for it based on, I think it was 4th edition at the time, D&D, and my friends and I, we played through it, and it was fun, and it actually helped me flesh out like some of the different aspects of the world and see how they would work in that environment. And my artist, Joe Sanchez, when he was doing my work, he said, he's like, dude, this is so tight, this system's so tight, this could be a game. And I'm like, yeah, I kind of designed it that way. So,
yeah.
I don't know. I've thought about, because I know there's like the DMs Guild and a few other places like that are kind of like that, DMs Guild being the biggest one. I've thought about, getting some of my art together and creating a nice little booklet and at least putting out like the magic system, a little bit of crunchy magic system out there to market my book and gaming at the same time. Because what I would like to do is put my comic out, and if it's a big enough success, then put out like, hey, I'll create a campaign setting for this.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Definitely a great idea to do do a cross promotion through different forms of media, and gaming definitely is always a great place to do it.
Yeah, gaming and fantasy books, or mine's like more urban fantasy, but whatever. But it's gaming and fantasy. I mean, there's a lot of like cross pollination there that, especially like comic book guys, they just don't seem to get. I don't know, they kind of think like, no, if you're a comic book guy, you're a comic book guy, you're nobody else. And I'm like, no, they're gamers, especially like RPGers are I think they could get into comic books. But what do you think about, like, I don't know, especially with like Critical Role and them, their success in the past, like, was it 3 years or so? They've kind of brought a different audience to gaming. But do you find that that's just in D&D, or is that like across all gaming? I mean, what do you think about that?
Well, it's hard to tell. I mean, D&D is such a huge, they control such a huge percentage of overall gaming that it's pretty much, it's them, and then there is everybody else. So, but I think it affects
So they're
everyone.
almost a genre on their own because they're so big. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, they really are. Yeah. I mean, I've never worked directly for the makers of D&D, but I've been with several companies, and it's essentially they're just a fraction of the size of a tiny fraction of anything that D&D produces.
You ever written for Dragon Magazine?
No. I think my only magazine contribution was for White Wolf, and I did a kaiju rules for BattleTech, the BattleTech tabletop game.
Dude, that's awesome.
Oh god, I need to get that. That's great.
Yeah, I think that it's floating around the interweb somewhere. Yeah, that's the kind of thing I like. I like throwing weird elements into games. And I had stats for Godzilla. I think I did Great Cthulhu too, because I mean, why not?
You're just like singing the song to you're singing like a love song to Ishiro right now.
Oh well, I'm a huge Lovecraftian guy. That's why I love your noir Lovecraft stuff.
Are you familiar with my work, or do I need to introduce you to Case File Arkham?
No, I was a backer. I read them. Yeah.
Thank you.
Much fun, very much fun stuff. I love the little settings and all the little in jokes in the illustrations and yeah. And I'm sure I didn't catch them all, but I love those.
Thank you.
Well, I should dig out the writing notes that we did. We did a special behind the scenes notes for the second book that literally goes through and points out every single reference, and not just Lovecraft, but historically and culturally, just anything that was in there.
Did you show your layouts? Those are the coolest things I've ever seen.
I'll see. I'd love to see those.
Real quick, Bar One Studio says Critical Role has actually brought a failing audience to gaming. The problem is people pick up D&D any edition expecting to play like the podcast. 2 to 3 character deaths later they quit. Very true.
I think the problem is that it is unrealistic in a lot of ways. One, Matt Mercer is a really good storyteller, and that's difficult to find. Two, and not only is he a good storyteller, but he's also willing to be a DM most of the time, like 85-90% of the time, and that's difficult to find in a group. Two, let's face it, that's a lot of pretty people playing a game. It's a lot of the quote unquote beautiful people playing the game. There's a reason there's stereotypes for gamers. I mean, there are some really great people. Don't get me wrong. I mean, there's some really great, absolutely beautiful, wonderful people to play the game, but there's a reason they're stereotypes, because they tend to be true.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a game for nerd guys and nerd girls, and that's how it is, and that's how we liked it for the most part. And to some degree, now there's like new groups of people trying to push us out of our own freaking safe space.
Exactly. They're telling us that we played it wrong. I get so many people now in the D&D, like the Facebook, because I joined a whole lot of that stuff to try to market my book and market other stuff and to get ideas to kind of catch the periphery and the I have a degree in clinical psychology, and so I study a lot of what people say and kind of assimilate that and sort of create a pattern, of thought and behavior. And when I look at a lot of the Dungeons and Dragons groups and everything, the prevailing idea is that now, I don't know, they look down on certain things. Like they call it, have you heard of the phrase murder hobo?
Oh, yeah. I'm actually thinking of titling a book by that.
Okay, well, a murder hobo is like, where you just go through and kill everything and you don't think about it. And honestly, that used to be what D&D players did.
Yeah,
it was no big deal.
What? And it was fun, and we liked it.
Exactly.
So, and if
but now if you don't have... Exactly, but now if you don't have like a damn 1 hour monologue to explain your character the first time you come in, you're just no good. You're not a real player.
Well, yeah, it started in the 90s. We got the wannabe actors. They kind of like slipped in through things like Vampire the Masquerade.
Yeah, come on, admit it. You're talking about the LARPers, right?
The LARPers. That's where I was going. It was the LARPers.
Geez, you know what? Shit. Last night I did my San Francisco or Bay Area stories. I forgot to talk about all the LARPers.
Well, you can save that for next time.
You would not believe the LARPers who were like going nonstop day to day in life.
Oh, I can believe
The
it.
only reason those guys, I don't know, that was one of the few RPGs that girls took part in.
Well, yeah, that was the thing. I mean, that was the key. I actually wrote a whole series of RPGs called Witchcraft because I wanted to get into that girl gamer market. Because yeah, I mean, it's like, and I saw it. I saw a vampire game. One girl showed up. All of a sudden, there were 7 players trying to get into that game. So yeah, I mean, Mark Reinhagen, he hit gold. He struck gold with that.
Yeah, I remember when I went to FSU, and I was at like I wasn't going to school there. I was in a cover band at the time, and I'm not going to say it was a very famous group of people that were also in a band in Tallahassee at that time, and they all had like a goth party in the stadium because they knew one of the security guards, and there were so many hot pleather wearing chicks with their arms crossed pretending to be invisible.
Yeah,
I was just like, yeah.
Right. All the conventions, you saw these guys in their black trench coats and their black shirts, and they were all like, cross arms. I'm invisible. I'm gonna cast dominate on you, and I'm like, get the fuck out.
No. Look, you can talk all the smack you want about vampire LARPers, but you don't know what it's like to be sitting in a restaurant or a coffee house with a bunch of what was the game, Carrie? Or was it?
Oh, Changeling.
Yeah, with a bunch of changeling LARPers. Jesus Christ.
That was like fairies, right?
Yeah. Did you have a red cap try to eat your table?
It was just all acting like Looney Tunes characters.
Yeah.
It was really annoying, and they were all dressed like ravers.
Or a puka trying to hump your leg.
Those pukas.
Owen asks, what was your favorite comic book series to read?
Well, I mean, I was sort of spoiled because, like I said in the private chat, I'm very old. So I grew up with Chris Claremont and John Byrne's X-Men. One of my very first series.
The good stuff.
Yeah, the Phoenix Saga. Kitty Pryde. Before everybody like kept retconning it, that.
Yeah, my era was the Australia period.
Yeah, so that was my jam, and I actually stopped reading comics in the 90s when it became all about the variant covers and all that crap. And then in the early 2000s, I subscribed to Marvel Unlimited and started catching up. But the closer I go to the present, the more I saw crap. And I'm like, what the hell is this shit?
Well, have you read today's comics?
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm not going to be subscribing to the Safe Space and Snowflake New Warriors. I'd rather turn my
apparently
eye.
Nobody is. It's got 220-something thousand downvotes so far.
Yeah, which is about 2 orders of magnitude more than the book is going to sell.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I grew disillusioned with the whole thing.
So with your Olympia series, right? Do you think you could put a jab or some sort of satire on, say, Snowflake and Safe Space?
Well, I kind of did in the books themselves, even though they were written in the the first half of the past decade, because I had the the Superman analogs and whatnot getting questioned by all these socially conscious people. And the whole idea that the Justice League analog was being dominated by white males and things like that. So yeah, I sort of make some commentary. Although I was trying to be fair back then, and I did try to put things in different perspectives. I had the main character is a very liberal, socially conscious college student. But the other main character is like this murderous vigilante who is kind of a cross between Rorschach and the Punisher, and he has a very different viewpoint than she does.
Well, Rorschach and the Punisher?
Yeah. He just he's generated a body count, and this is a guy who got his powers when his stepfather was beating him to death. So he has a sort of jaundiced view of the world. And he actually ends up becoming very close with the college girl, even though their life experiences are very different.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, it was fun. I had a lot of fun writing that series.
I just don't know how I can put those two characters together.
Well, therein lies the story.
Just imagine a ANCAP libertarian who likes to shoot people.
Yeah.
Oh, so it's like so it's Rorschach with guns. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, he's sort of like a film noir character. And I actually I was being very pretentious when I wrote my first novel. So actually, his POV sections are written in the first person, whereas everybody else is in the third person.
It sounds a little bit like in feel and philosophy, like the X series, like X Heroes, X Patriots, all that
Yes,
stuff. I can't remember.
I actually enjoyed those books a lot.
Peter Klein's, that's it. Peter Klein's by Peter Klein's.
Yeah, I love the whole zombie superhero thing.
It was an interesting take on the whole idea that it wasn't, that it wasn't like the zombieism that killed you. It was just the fact that like these bodies just kept carrying. They were like super carriers. They became super carriers and attracted all viruses. And so, when a zombie bit you, it was giving you like 1,000 viruses at one time.
Right. But yeah, that was one of the books I was reading when trying to explore how superheroes and comic book style stories were doing in prose.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, those are good books.
Yeah, he's got a. I don't know. He has a very. I don't know. Like his signature is very specific. It's almost like he ramps up to good scenes. You know what I mean? There's kind of I don't know. There's almost like a lot of exposition and filler. It sort of slows down. He's talking about they're in their bunker eating I don't know, like weird colored Cheez-Its or something, and then having sex, and then all of a sudden they're fighting a bunch of zombies. And when he finally gets back to the zombies, like it's cool. Or I can't, like there was that one character that was a living star, but he was like handicapped, I think, otherwise. And every scene he was in like was really well written, but it seemed like sometimes he'd get bored of his own writing.
Yeah, I mean, well, he did try really changing the style from every character's perspective, which I enjoyed. I mean, I thought that he did it fairly well.
He did though. I don't know. I thought he relied too much on the tropes. Like the dragon guy was obviously Superman, kind of a learning, budding Superman, and then you had the super stealthy girl was Batman, more or less. I can't remember their names, but I think you know who I'm talking about. Like she was just utterly perfect. She was smart. Like literally, I think her power was that she was perfect.
Yeah,
and she ends up I think she like it made you think, like, even though the dude was getting laid with everybody, like, hey, this girl wants to seduce him too. I was like, oh, come on, dude, this is a little bit too much wish fulfillment.
Right.
Wolf 10 Media asked, would you guys consider doing a stream about when to subvert the audience's expectations and when not to?
Why don't we do it next week?
Oh, that sounds good.
But in the time being, why don't we ask our guest about that topic?
I'd say when it makes for a good story, you can subvert expectations. If you're just being an asshole and trying to insult the audience by saying, fooled you, assholes, then don't do it, because all you're doing is pissing people off.
Absolutely. Isn't it horrible that he's come out now and literally said that's all he wanted to do was tell his story?
Ryan Roundhead Johnson,
Yeah, he's come out and just, instead of like, now that he's sort of outside Disney and everything, he's saying like, I wanted to tell my story, and I didn't, before he said, oh, well, nobody told me otherwise. They did tell him otherwise. He didn't care. He made his story anyway.
Yep, fuck that guy.
Jesus.
Yeah.
You know, he's going to go down in history as the guy that wrecked Star Wars, and everyone hates him for it.
Yeah, pretty
You know
much.
what's
Legacy.
If you think about it, Disney's fighting for survival now. Okay.
Yeah.
Would they have been better off had they had the half of the fandom that they lost for the biggest IP that's ever existed?
Absolutely. They lost probably over $1 billion per movie because of Ryan Johnson.
Well, what I'm saying is they could literally think about it. Like nobody or not as many people went to the Star Wars galaxies, right, as they thought. They've come out and admitted they thought that, they undershot by 300%.
Yep.
What they thought were going to come into the Star Wars galaxies.
They purchased the most popular franchise in cinema or in storytelling history, with probably
And ran
the
into the
most
ground.
loyal and obsessed and spend happy fan base in history, and they screwed it up.
Yep. Takes a lot, but they managed it.
I mean, it's like, how do you screw that up?
Well, look at Disney.
Yep. Ryan Johnson did it by the numbers. I mean, the first movie was no great shakes, but at least J.J. Abrams was, catering to the crowd. He was playing to the crowd. Ryan Johnson hates the crowd. He wanted to piss them off, and he did. And I guess the people.
Well, he's got that. Yeah.
Yeah, they probably thought that they could serve them shit sandwiches and they would ask for seconds. Well, it turns out that doesn't work.
Yeah, well, I mean, he put out that video a long time ago when he had just come out of film school, and everybody showed that, and Disney was like, "No, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter." He didn't do that, and obviously now he did. But he came out and he said, "I don't want to make a movie that everybody likes. I want to make a movie where half the people like it and half the people hate it, because that's what makes a good movie to me."
And that's fine, but why are they handing this dickhead a multi-billion-dollar license? He can make his own freaking space movie if he wants to subvert all the expectations.
Because Kathleen Kennedy is an idiot and has no idea what she's doing.
I mean, seriously. I mean, that just goes to show. If you had like the Marvel guy in charge of Star Wars, that would have never happened, because he's not afraid of saying you're not following the tone to any director and kicking them to the curb.
Yeah, Feige. I don't know. Even like Marvel movies are going super woke now, though.
Yeah, well,
from what I understand.
They're over.
The problem is when they get overconfident, and we'll see how Phase 4 does next. Assuming we have movies.
I have no interest in it.
Yeah, I'm really. I kind of want to see the Doctor Strange movie, but most of the rest I'm kind of meh. And I still haven't subscribed to Disney Plus because I don't see the point.
No one did after Mandalorian.
Yeah, I mean, and it's like, I'm not going to pay money for one show. Sorry, that's where most of these streaming services die, because Netflix, they're spending money like crazy. They have 20 shows at any given time that you might be interested in.
I bet you Netflix is loving this quarantine.
Oh yeah, they must be making out like bandits. It's
and yet Disney streaming isn't.
Well, they don't have enough.
Well, actually, they're ahead of schedule. They said that they're over 300% from where they thought they would be at this point. The problem is that the Parks and Recreation is 23% of their income for the entire company, and it is gone.
So
yeah,
it's not going to last.
Yeah, I mean the parks pretty much carry that entire company. And now
it's the merchandise that carries. Like merchandise is something like there was a whole report that I saw recently come out about it. It's like 23% is Parks and Recreation. There's something like 30-something% is the merchandising from, and I think that it's everything. That's Star Wars, comics, everything. You know what I mean? But IP licensed merchandise is like over 30%, and that's way down because people aren't getting. See, what a lot of people don't realize is that buying is a habit, and when that habit breaks, you have to remake it. Buying comic books, getting into games, doing all these things. These are habit-based hobbies. It takes according to most evidence-based study, it takes about 7 days to lose a habit. It can take up to like 66 days to get it back.
Yep, we're in a brave new world now.
Anime Acid Trip says, going back to Rorschach, what's your opinion on Watchmen, both the book and the show?
All right, the book. I think I'm not going to say it's overrated because it's a classic comic book, and it deserves I would say 90% of the praise it's been heaped on it. The thing is, Alan Moore doesn't like the comic book genre. He doesn't like comic books. He doesn't like comic book characters. He doesn't really understand them. So he was able to deconstruct the whole genre quite well, but he wouldn't be able to do an actual superhero story. He just doesn't have it in him. He doesn't understand why somebody would actually put himself in danger to save somebody unless he had a mental deficiency. And that's my problem with Watchmen. The show I never bothered. I took one look at the wokeness involved, and I was like, I'm not going to give HBO my money. I had canceled my subscription after Game of Thrones shed the bed, and I'm not going back. And just remember, CJ's opinion is not represented by this channel.
Did you check out The Boys?
Amazon had it.
That sounds familiar. I don't. Oh, The Boys.
I kind of felt.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, I felt like it was a sort of like Watchmen kind of thing, like a deconstruction.
It is, but it was enjoyable. I mean, it was Gareth Ennis who's another deconstructor, but I think he has a better understanding than Moore.
Moore doesn't like superheroes at all. Like, he thinks superheroes and even the basic, like, he thinks the hero's journey is a joke.
Yep.
He doesn't like it at all.
and
compasses.
Yeah, to me that. Yeah. To me that tells me that there is a moral deficiency in there. That he finds the idea, a fireman going into a burning building, there must be something wrong with him, because he wouldn't do it. I mean, that's what his writings and his commentary tells me. I mean, for all I know, he might be a really nice guy, but to me, this is a guy who's like enjoying the privilege that other people are putting their lives at risk for his safety, whereas he would never do that in return, and that has always left a sour taste in my mouth.
Well, I mean, he wrote, like, was it League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, which I don't know if people have read like the later ones, but they include this sort of parody of like Harry Potter, and he's in articles completely destroyed J.K. Rowling and said that, and other authors like her, and just, talked about how they were just a complete joke, and that these are the kind of stories that we tell young people, but we shouldn't, that they should be locked away and or like thrown away and never to be seen, because people get the wrong idea reading these. I mean, I don't know what he wants people to read, honestly.
I don't know. That's Capital. I don't know.
Yeah.
like he just wants people to read Exodus. That's it.
Yeah. I mean,
Wolf 10 Media thinks that your accent is sexy.
Oh, well, thank you. I was born in the U.S., but I grew up in South America, so I had to learn English as a second language.
So we're coming up on the last 10 minutes of the show, so if you have any quick questions, I would suggest writing them now. Again, just to review, though, CJ, would you like to promote any project or book that you would like people to go check out?
Well, I am currently finishing the last book of the Second World Marine series, the Bicentennial War. The book is titled Victory or Death, and it should be coming out by the end of the month.
Excellent. And people can get that from Amazon?
Yes, I'm going to be putting a pre-sale link probably next week.
Wonderful.
Do you have any
And-
Audible?
I actually have audibles for the first series. I did all 5 books have audibles of that.
Oh, I'll check them out. I read like, I don't know, anywhere between like 15 books a month or so. So I'll get those.
Excellent.
And in the pre-chat, you said you had a story to tell us.
Well, I think I sort of I basically was speaking about how I got into became an indie writer, and the basic thing is I became impatient. Traditional publishing takes so long. You have to find an agent, and the agent has to find a publisher, and then even if everything goes great, it's going to be 2-3 years before your first book shows up. And I didn't want to wait, so I just jumped in, and in 6 years I've done 15 books. So that was basically it.
Oh,
not that interesting, I guess.
no, that is interesting, actually. You know, you jump in the deep end. Whoops.
Okay, we got a question.
What are you drinking over there?
Coffee. Elton asks, when do you think a project is going well and when you think it might not work?
If I'm having fun writing it and I can't wait to get to the end, I think it's going well. But I really don't know when something works or not until the audience responds to it. So it's sort of like you may think you've written the greatest thing ever, but if people aren't buying it, then you probably screwed the pooch.
I had an argument with somebody the other day, and I said, look, if you put it out there and nobody buys it, it's just not good. It just doesn't work for the market, whatever it is.
Yep, there you go. Yeah, I think my best novel from a technical standpoint is probably one of my lowest sellers. So,
which one would that be?
It was my Lovecraftian horror novel titled Shadowfall Las Vegas. And it's like a big apocalyptic disaster story. And I mean, I thought that was my best technical work, but I mean, and it sold okay, but it hasn't, it doesn't sell what the War Marines do.
And
sometimes it's just about finding your own audience. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean some genres are harder than others.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I mean, there are certain specific niches, and I mean, it's a little bit harder to really cultivate an audience for this. Like you said, that's where the mailing list comes in, because then if you have a mailing list, the bigger that gets, the more experimental you can be.
Yep. Very true. I see somebody's asking me if I'm going to be at the Palladium open house. No, I haven't worked for Palladium for getting close to 20 years now, so, or maybe it's 20 years. So I really don't participate in stuff. I mean, I'm in good terms with Kevin Simbida, the founder of the company, but I haven't really done any work. And I see, does that apply to a free-to-read webcomic? I don't know. I mean, I'm a hot dog salesman. I don't give out free stuff, so I don't know what free does. I think if it's free, a lot more people will try it, but people who want free stuff usually don't want to buy stuff, so they're not my audience.
You don't ever do like the free lead magnet?
I do. I've done a few free, but I mostly do 99-cent sales. I think if they don't pay for it, they don't value it.
They don't respect it, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of the free gatherers, they have thousands of books, free books in their Kindles, and they're never going to read them.
You know what I find is that a lot of times that destroys new authors, because they'll come in, they write a book, and they're told by this whole, I don't know. I got into an argument with somebody because we were talking about Napster, right? And just bear with me, like they were talking about Napster and how Napster sort of changed the landscape of how we look at art. Because if you think about it, until Napster came out, it wasn't as easy. I mean, people did trade singles and tapes and everything, but it wasn't as easy to get whatever single or whatever music or whatever it was that you wanted, like from just your friend or just somebody you didn't know. It was without consequence, right? And if you think about it, that began an entire generation of people that don't value or respect the price of art.
Or even
Yeah.
understand
So they
that
think
if you steal it, that the artist can't make anymore.
Yeah,
exactly.
essentially.
And you know, and so like if now you run into this prevailing methodology that people have, or pathology, that art is just most artists, except for like the top 0.0001, should give their work away.
Yeah, and I mean, with music, you can try to monetize your popularity in other ways, like doing live venues and things like that. But again, I think, I think what you say is exactly right. If people are getting it for free, they don't give it any value, and I don't. That model is not for me. I'm not gonna. If I don't get paid, I'm not gonna do it. I mean, I
Well,
enjoy
Yeah, I
writing.
mean,
I've got a story about that. And that is my first series, Utopiates, which was a cyberpunk type setting. And one thing that doesn't seem to be as prevailing now, but when it came out, a lot of these twerps thought meaning cyberpunk is you stole everything. If you could get it free online, you'd pirate it. And that really was their perception of the culture. And the number of people I had come to me at conventions and ask when book 2 would come out, and then mention that they'd torrented the book and didn't actually buy it. If they had all bought the book, there would be another one.
There you go.
I mean, it sold decently, but definitely not enough for me to justify doing more. And on the flip side of things, I said, okay, well, then I'll write to a different audience. And when I did my Case File Arkham, those people bought books. They were more than thrilled to be buying hardbacks or print copies. So, yeah, if you're willing to pay for your art, if you're willing to actually support the artist, you'll get your art.
True that.
Okay, let's see. Is there any more? I don't know if that's a question. Is that?
No.
Okay, well. Okay, I guess we could wrap it up, 3 minutes early? I think we're all kind of wearing down. It's been a long day. So, CJ, I'm really, really glad to have had you on. You're a great guest. I'd like to have you back.
Oh, thank you. Would love to.
And second, I would recommend everyone to go down into the description and check out the links. There's a link to CJ's Amazon page and his webpage.
Mm-hmm.
Sign up for his mailing list at least.
I appreciate it. Also, I want to give a shout out to Fiona Wolf, who's always been a great supporter of my work on Twitter and on reviews. So thank you.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you, Fiona. So as always, I am your host, the Night Editor, Kat Rocha. You can find me at nighteditor.com. CJ, again, tell us all, what's your website? Where can people find you?
Well, my website is cjcarella.com. No spaces or lines. And you can find me on Twitter and Facebook, also as CJ Carella, at the end of Twitter or Facebook's URL.
And Buddy?
You can find me at the Buddy Lord on Twitter, and you can find me at bladenight.com. You mind if I throw that in the chat real quick, guys?
Sure. Okay, so check it out.
There you go.
Excellent.
And I am J.Ishiro, author and alien. And you can find me at Twitter at J_Finney and on Amazon. Go buy my books.
Especially the kaiju book, so he can make another one.
Yes.
He's not very subtle. He's not very subtle at all, is he?
The annoying part about that is I've got that second book written, and I've even got about 5 pages of the art already finished.
Oh,
wow.
Yeah, I really love to see that story continue.
So So yeah, check out World War Kaiju. You could get it on Amazon.com, and actually up until the end of the month, all 01 Publishing books, including all of J.Ishiro's works, are available digitally for 50% off at 01publishing.com. So definitely go check those out.
Awesome.
Thank you. You were going to say something?
No, awesome, and thank you for having me.
All right. Good night.
Thank you very much. Good night, everybody.